goodness. I'm doing a lot of exploring, really experimenting. I think I'd been for many, many years doing mostly geometric works and dealing with a lot of really bright colors. And like you can kind of see back here, this was one of the series I've been working on up until just about a week ago, actually, in which I was doing traditional American quilt patterns and trying to incorporate a real hard-edged minimalist style into that work. Most recently, like literally a week ago, I attempted my first, realistic nude figurative painting. And so I'm kind of taking a little detour right now to explore that and see what's going on within me. Yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't know, it's kind of almost like, I think that's related to what inspires me or have been inspirations in my life. I know that the biggest source of creative inspiration I had was growing up, and it was my grandmother. And she lived to be like 95, I believe, before she died. And about 70 years of those 95, she was a quilter, a very traditional hand quilting person. Lived way out in the country. I think her nearest neighbor was about 3 miles down the road from her. But I remember her sewing and conversations we had, when I was a little kid, and just being at awe at what she could do with little scraps of fabric. And I think from then, I don't know if it was just innate or just young experiences where my parents really did nurture my creative energy. And so when I was 4, they actually sent me to this older lady. I think she was probably in her 70s or 80s, but she was living in the woods near Spring Hill, Louisiana, and her name was Kathy Hill. And she gave art lessons, and I remember every Monday night after school, and I took piano lessons too, so I would go over to her place and she would have like group oil painting lessons. And so the very first, formal instruction I got in visual arts was when I was 4, and it was with her. And so it was really cool. Learning some of the basics of painting, form and color, and highlight and shadow, and how to do those things with real basic still life paintings and landscape paintings. And I just remember very, very fond memories of going out to her house every Monday night and being with them. They were all adults, really. That were in the class, so I was just a little kid living there at the time. Getting to paint and learning how to use brushes, not just finger painting. So it was a different experience. I'm really grateful that I had that opportunity. I know my parents they sacrificed a lot just for me to be able to do that. And I was lucky. I had other teachers that were in the small town of Plain Dealing where I grew up, north of Shreveport. Bobby Scarborough was another, instructor that I had growing up, and she would do group lessons also in our little town that I grew up in. And then her daughter, as an adult, was my high school art teacher. So that was actually when I made the transition from oil painting to, experimenting with watercolors, tempera, gouache, and then finally acrylics. And so I liked acrylics a lot. And so I kind of, well, kind of like I mentioned earlier, I really dig the hard edge minimalist works of people like, a big inspiration for me was, or is, Carmen Herrera, and she is fabulous. She's 101, and she'll be 102 years old next month. She lives in New York, and she's originally from Cuba, but she is still producing art, and she was contemporary of a lot of the minimalist hard edge painters in the 1950s and then into the 1960s. But she was, as she said in the documentary 100-Year Show, it's on Netflix, she was invisible as a woman artist in the 50s and early 60s, even though she was just as good as the other male artists who were becoming recognized as the contemporary artists of the day. She kind of was overlooked, but it never stopped her from painting. And so I think that's where I get a lot of my inspiration for the hard edge paintings that I do, and the series that I'm doing on quilting and the geometrics that comes from my grandmother. So maybe it's the older female influences that I've had in my life that were really the source of my inspiration. And I can totally see that. It doesn't require a therapist to pick that one apart. But at the same time, I'm pretty excited about the figurative works that I'm giving a go with right now too. And I think for me, it's just, if it's challenging, me to stretch myself a little bit artistically, then it's something that I can really get into. And in psychology and art therapy and in art and even sports, there's this concept of getting into the flow, and it's sort of that space where everything just sort of fades away except what you're focusing on in the here and now, in the moment. And so it doesn't always happen, but when you get into that space creatively, the whole world just sort of disappears, and it's nothing but you and what you're projecting onto a canvas, or as some other people do, sculpt or take photography, photographs, or work in video or other medium. Even though I don't paint in the style that he made popular, I would probably want to hang out with Salvador Dali, and mainly because he looks like he is a trip, and he would, any time spent with him would be wacky as hell, and we would have a good time, we would party, and hopefully you would get a better understanding of how he saw the world and how he came up with surrealism and all those images that he created. But he would be definitely my top pick for artists that I would like to hang out with. That's an interesting question. I don't know that I let my emotions loose necessarily. Oftentimes I think when I get into that creative space where I'm hyper-focused on what I'm doing, it's a very cerebral experience. There's a lot of emotion involved, but I think that I just process those things differently. And so for me, it's about bringing order, to what it is that I'm trying to create. And I've got to admit it, I'm a control freak. A lot of people are, a lot of artists are, and we find that there's a lot about life that we have absolutely no control over, but when we are in that space where we're creating, we have control over our body, we have control over what we project onto a canvas or whatever surface we're working with. We have control over color, we have control over shape, we have control over, whatever it is that we're creating. And so for me, that's a place where it's very calm and very soothing. And in some ways, it's a very therapeutic process for me to just be engaged in painting, because again, that's a place that's a safe space for me, and it's a place that I can explore whatever it is that I've got in my head and get it out there. And it's up to me to choose how to get it out there, what to create, or what to do with it. So maybe it is a way of processing emotions. But with my art, it's very controlled, and so it's a very cathartic experience, in that I get a great deal of joy seeing that I can master getting a really straight edge on something, or being able to give an illusion of shape or form or depth, by using shadow or light, depending on what I'm working on at the time. So, I guess it's expressive to a certain extent, but it's also a place for me to just process what it is that I'm experiencing. I was born a poor white boy in rural Louisiana. I was born in New Orleans, and I was adopted at 6 weeks of age. So I grew up in Plain Dealing, Louisiana, but I always knew that I was adopted. I always knew that I was wanted, I was loved, all the things that kids need to know, especially if they're adopted. But all kids need to know that they're wanted and they're loved. Anyway, I digress. Growing up in a small town, and that was really cool because the whole town was our playground. I mean, growing up, we knew all of our neighbors, we knew everyone several blocks away. Everybody in our town knew everybody else. So we were pretty safe, and so we were able to ride our bikes all over town. You were sure if you got in trouble, your parents would find out about it very quickly. Very rural existence. Both of my grandparents were farmers, sets of grandparents, and so I grew up, always having gardens, animals, fresh food, fresh, everything. But I decided I needed to get the hell out of that small town, and I was very much drawn towards doing mission work, strangely enough, when I was a teenager. And so I went to a small Baptist university in East Texas, and graduated from there with a degree in behavioral sciences, and then went to grad school in psychology and finished that. And pretty much my career has been mostly in the human services field, so always working in nonprofit agencies that worked within communities, supporting people in different ways. that's a really, it's a painful one actually. After I'd had art instructions from when I was 4 years old until I graduated high school, so all during that time I was learning and growing about different media and really loved painting. And I really gravitated towards acrylics because they were cleaner to work with, they dried quickly, you could paint over them very easily, so I kind of stuck with acrylics for once I was in high school. However, when I went to college and grad school, I quit painting altogether, and during the first probably 8 years of my career or so, career life, I didn't paint. I just kind of put all of that aside and focused on work. But in December of 2000, my mother was abducted from her home and killed. And that was a major turning point in my life and a lot of other people's lives in our family and in our community. And honestly, it was art, the creative process that helped me to deal with that trauma. And so at that point, I moved to California and was trying to start a new life for myself out there. And I ended up buying some paints and some brushes and some canvases and started painting again. And it was a very liberating experience. And so I was able to, even though it was a very controlled thing, I was very emotionally expressive through what I was creating, canvases, and trying to process all of the emotions, all of the pain and the grief that I was experiencing. And I guess the way that I countered all of that darkness, that dark emotional energy that I was feeling at the time, was kind of doing the opposite. I was painting with very vibrant colors, and once I started letting that back out, from within, it affected how I felt also. And of course, I saw a therapist throughout all of this time, but I think that the painting and the creating art was probably one of the best things I did to try to heal from the pain that I was experiencing. So that was probably a seminal moment in my life where I turned to art as a means of healing, and it worked, and it still works. So I've dealt with depression and anxiety issues my whole life, and medication and therapy. I can rattle these off pretty quickly. I've had a real variety of work opportunities in my life, from being a stock boy and cleaner at a pharmacy when I was young to being a pizza delivery driver, a waiter, working in social work, case management work with people with mental illness, working with foster children, working as director of group homes for people with mental disabilities. I was over a program in California where people living with AIDS and mental health issues and substance abuse issues who were previously homeless lived in a residential facility. I was over that program. I was a taxi driver for a couple of years, and that was one of the wildest jobs I've ever had. I've been a private consultant in nursing homes, working with people after Hurricane Katrina who were displaced by that event. I was executive director of Philadelphia Center, which was a local nonprofit organization here in Shreveport for people living with HIV and AIDS that a whole variety of services, that were community based. Done freelance artwork. Substitute teaching. I've been doing that also off and on. And I think that might be it. Yeah, I've had quite a mixture of work opportunities in my life. Without a doubt, my favorite and most inspirational place would be, and it could be just about any one of them, but there are 3 different redwood forests in Northern California that I consider to be my happy places. So whenever I feel particularly sad or scared or alone, I visually just sort of teleport myself back to one of those places. One of them was Calaveras Big Trees Park in California. The other one was at Mariposa Grove, which is part of Yosemite National Park in Northern California. And the other one is, I just forgot what the name was. Muir Woods, north of San Francisco Bay Area. That's a really amazing redwood forest park as well. So that would be my favorite place on the planet so far. Again, that's pretty easy. The best piece of advice I've been given has been do what you love and love what you do. Because if you're doing what you love, then you're going to do it as good as you can. And if you're doing what you love, you're going to love what you're doing. So it feeds off of each other. So whether it be a job or an application or whatever it is, as long as you're doing what you love. It kind of relates to a quote from Joseph Campbell also, which was follow your bliss. So if you're doing whatever it is that creates that sense of blissfulness within you, then you're on the right path. Keep going down that path. So that would be probably the best advice I've ever been given. And hopefully I can keep remembering that and following that advice, moving forward.